take care of the physical, and I start there. With assessments, we do the physical first. And sometimes people go, oh, like the depression or other emotional things. Well, that's the emotional part. We'll talk about that later. No, it's not, because most of the time there's a physical component to it, right? It's how we were eating, what we were eating, etc. Let's clean that up, and a lot of that stuff will then start to take care of itself. Now we look at what's left. What's left is, a lot of times it's the past. It's like, post-traumatic stress disorder, right? I have a traumatic childhood. 80% of people did, Jack Canfield said, so, big deal, get over it. Well, it's not big deal, get over it. It's let's honor it and let's do something about it. So there's 3 different disciplines that I've heard about that has the emotional quotient. David Hawkins, who's amazing, Scientology, and the teachings of Abraham. And there's actually a scale where they talk about feelings and where you're actually vibrating, because we're vibratory beings, right? Our energy goes out, 3-4 feet, 32 layers deep. And so traumas actually stay in the outside of the aura. So if we look at the bottom half of the emotional chart, where we go, what kind of emotions do you think are there? Yes?
Loneliness.
Loneliness, that's a good one. Yes, for sure. Any other ones?
Frustration.
Frustration, yeah.
Anger.
Anger, absolutely.
Helplessness.
Helplessness, depression. Do you know depression and helplessness is at the very bottom of the emotional chart? Anger is even higher. Now, when you're depressed, your parents would rather have you sit in your room, right, and be by yourself than explode and get angry about all your stuff. But when you've got anger, don't you have more life-giving energy than when you're stuck, right? And so you never want to go backwards down the chart, but I'll tell you, you want to move yourself up. If you're in a depression, you've got some stuff to be angry about, it's just suppressed. So now let's look at the top of half of the chart. This is the happiness part. What are some emotions that when you're just feeling like everything is awesome, give me some emotional words.
Lighthearted.
Lighthearted, nice.
Courageous.
Courageous, yes, for sure.
Optimistic.
Optimistic, beautiful. Optimism, happiness, serenity, those are actually at the very top of the chart. So, do you see how if you're in the bottom half of the chart, it's easy to get off track with food? What foods would you gravitate to if you're living in the bottom half of this quotient versus when you're living in the top half? Isn't it easier if you're in that happiness mode to stay on track, right? So here's this slogan, being happy doesn't mean that everything's perfect, it means that you've decided to look beyond the imperfections. So Norman Cousins actually, cured himself of cancer, if you've read Anatomy of an Illness, by using laughter therapy. And then there's relationships. I mean, we have relationships, right, with spouses, kids, employers, co-workers, etc. Do you have any toxic people in your life? And if so, if they're dragging you down, I'll tell you, you got to find a way to let them go. And it might not be easy, but it needs to be done. People, if they're in your life, they need to be lifting you up and being your cheerleaders, because they totally, I call them energy vipers. They suck you dry.